in the meantime.
Okay. Okay.
Now, being this is a work session, do we still do roll call?
Let's go ahead and do that, and I can just
Okay.
mark. I mean, I kind of we have it recorded, so we know who's here, who's not here. But it looks like we have a phone number. Somebody's called in, and I'm not sure who it is, so we'll want to say hello to them and let them kind of identify who they are and what interests them about economic development in North Plains. So let me grab a pen.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll start with that. See, we have a guest who's calling in. Would you mind just letting us know who is joining us tonight and what your interest is in our committee meeting in North Plains?
Nothing yet. It's a phone call. It's not a Zoom per se. Oh, here we go. Unmuted. Hello? Oh, probably muted again. If the person who's called into the meeting, it looks like it's from a Dallas area code. Could we say hello to you and just kind of as part of the meeting, how you identify yourself? Still quietly listening. Let's see here. Well, let's go ahead and do roll call, and maybe we can revisit that soon.
All right, let's do that. So we know Chair Gabe Martinez, he is on his way, but he's a little bit late. It sounds like they had an event right before that they just got out of. So he's on his way. So I will go ahead, I guess, and do the rest of the committee. Eric Lawson.
Present.
Jacqueline Hunt.
Present.
And Erica is not here tonight. And then obviously myself, Lisa Butler, I'm present. And I think that is our committee then. And then we've got Bill here representing. All right.
I'm here for staff. Andy is, I'm not Andy. He's not here. So, okay. Well, we don't have. Hello. If you're the one who was called in on the phone, we'd love to hear from you and for you to identify yourself and kind of let us know what interests you about North Plains economic development. And they're still muted. Okay. Well, we can move on, I guess. Do you have the agenda in front of you, Lisa, by the way?
Yeah, let me take a look at it. So on our agenda, we have, it looks like, I believe, a few items. We wanted to do the EOA update, then the downtown plan update, and then finally continue work on the EDC roadmap, which, as Bill said, Gabe has already done some updating for us to take a look at. So given that, should we start with the EOA update?
Sure. So I can give you an update on the EOA. It is still in progress. So we have a consultant on board. They've been working on it. And they've done different steps of the scope of work for us, but we're not ready yet with some draft analysis and land need specifics yet. So I had a meeting with the consultant, and then we have a land use law consultant that's working with us, just because when you go through the process and you're a community surrounded by farmland, you have to make sure that you're doing all of your homework carefully on land use issues. So we do have a land use attorney on board just to kind of help us with things. And hopefully by the end of this month, we should have a pretty solid set of some draft analysis and some numbers regarding what type of industries we think are realistic for us, how much land, what types of sites that would require, over a 20-year period. I do have some data. I did get a big packet of data from Oregon Employment Department, and we've turned that into some exhibits that are going into the EOA. And so let me show you just a couple of them, okay? So here's one that part of this kind of what we're learning in the story that we're exploring as we think about land need. One of the things is jobs, housing balance. And, over the last few years, the city's added 300-ish homes, largely Sunset Ridge, not completely, but largely. At least 2016 to 2020, we added a few more in 2021. But according to Oregon, kind of like the comprehensive data set of employers in North Plains, the city added 135 jobs when it added a little over 300 homes. So here's Mr. Martinez right here. So anyway, the bottom line is that North Plains is becoming its jobs housing balance is, hey Gabe, North Plains' jobs housing balance is getting worse. And it's just kind of more the case being made that we have to put an emphasis on employment and employment land as we explore expanding our UGB, because we can't be a city that runs on residential development only. It's a fiscally unsustainable thing. And we need more jobs closer to people so that they have places to shop as well as places to work. So that's kind of one of the upshots. And then what we also found is from Census on the Map data is that according to census data, 98% of our employed residents in North Plains commute to outside of North Plains to work or have an employer outside of it. We used to commute, but in COVID, at least in 2019, the vast majority of people who live in North Plains and work were commuting. So either they're telecommuting now or there's some kind of hybrid combination, but it's just more evidence that North Plains really has to work to turn around the bedroom community pattern. So that much importance on adding employment land, sufficient employment land for the city to kind of balance out the residential growth. Any questions
Bill,
about those?
can I ask a question on your
Yeah,
previous
sure.
slide?
Yeah, sure. There you go.
What is desirable? Like 300 new households with a third of those people working in North Plains. I'm just doesn't seem like a horrible or unexpected statistic. So what's the desirable statistic we're shooting for?
Well, that's a great question. And we discussed this a bit at City Council back in September. Like, how should we even think about this? We know we don't like that North Plains is increasingly a bedroom community, but there are quality of life and just fiscal sustainability implications. You need to have a healthy balance of people living somewhere and then businesses being there, and that combination balances out how things can sustainably work. There really is no rule for what a good jobs housing balance is. I can tell you right now, Washington County in 2020, their jobs housing balance was 1.17. So some people say the rule of thumb is you want at least one job per household in a community on average. Some say 1.25. It kind of, depending on what city you talk to, they target different ones, but it's usually at least the jobs housing balance different cities target ranges anywhere typically from 1.0 on the low side of target to 1.3 on the high side, if a city wants to be really aggressive about having jobs. We don't have a sales tax in Oregon, so cities tend to not worry as much about certain types of industries being in a city. If we had a sales tax, we'd be all over getting retail, right? But that's not the case. So our jobs housing balance numbers tend to be a little bit lower, but 0.7 is well below 1. And yeah, that's not good.
And what did you say Washington County's was? 1 point what?
1.17. And Hillsborough's is over 1.5 right now.
You know, I'm just thinking of our proximity to Nike and Intel,
Mhm.
which we love, I would think, and it's spurring our residential growth. And that's what you would expect,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a 12-minute commute from North Plains to Ronler Acres. I mean, opposite traffic. I mean, that's how you can't
Right.
beat that. You can't beat that commute to Intel, really.
And
think
so when you
also
say the city can't survive, I don't think we're desiring an Intel fab. And I guess I'm speaking for myself, not anyone else. But it just hadn't occurred to me to want to drive that kind of economic growth, and the idea that we would provide the amenities. I actually remember when we started the Economic Council, you know, city councilors telling us that we actually did want to become a bedroom community, that was the desirable identity for North Plains. And so I'm not disputing what you're saying. I'm just trying to get my head like wrapped around it.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, at the time though, what people didn't really look at was the fact that right now, at least over the past couple of years, I'm kind of working on an analysis of how sustainable different types of development are for North Plains. And the issue right now is that for every home in North Plains right now, each household or each housing unit, whether it's property taxes, fees, indirectly through franchise fees for having cable TV and telephone, all those things, when you add up all the different ways revenues go to the city to pay for operating expenses, each housing unit on average each year, kind of, what's the right word? Contributes directly and indirectly around $900 of tax revenue on average. And then, no, sorry, per capita, I should say. This is not per household, this is per capita, per person. And then, but if you look at how much it costs a city to provide all of its services to its residents per capita, the cost is around a little over $1,200. So on average, each new person that moves to the city increases revenue on total revenues directly and indirectly by about $900, but the cost of law enforcement, library, parks and rec, everything comes to about $1,200. So there's this $300 gap that businesses and taxes on them have to fill. They have to fill that gap, and that gap is widening every year that law enforcement costs go up, and the costs go up every year. So that gap widens. But property taxes are limited to growing by 3% annually under Oregon law, even though the cost of law enforcement in the next year might go up a full 11%. We're looking at property taxes only going up by 3% by state law. So a city can't be a bedroom community, or it will have serious fiscal problems after a certain amount of time. So that we have to be careful of that.
I think that is super insightful, and I would love as you do your analysis to better understand those drivers, because some of those things like library and park and rec seem like fixed costs, such that I would imagine, my brain, uneducated, would imagine that adding additional residents would actually spread out the cost and not automatically contribute more money per resident. So all of that to say, not to doubt you, but I'm just really, as you do your analysis, if you could continue to teach us about that and those drivers, I think it would be really helpful for me as a contributing member to this team.
Yep, sure. Absolutely. I mean, I'm still working, I mean, kind of still working on it because, I mean, that comes in fits and starts. I mean, like right now, we have a plan and a facility study that demonstrates that every year that goes by, the existing library building and the existing city hall and the existing public works facility are further and further maxed out in terms of, they should be bigger, given the way growth has happened. So there's kind of those capital costs also that doesn't even talk about. The cost of expanding those facilities to house more street sweepers and public works vehicles and employees, all that fun stuff. So I'm just talking operating right now. I haven't tried to come up with a reasonable way to talk about how much more, cost versus benefit there is on the capital facility side, but we can get to that. So this is purely operating right now. But yes, that's all part of it. The main thing is, the big thing is Oregon state law limits property tax revenue to 3% annually, and nothing grows in cost by 3%. that at the end of the day is the big constraint, unfortunately. So Gabe, you are here. You can take over I was just kind of for the EOA update, I was just expressing that by the end of the month, we should have some solid new analysis that talks about what kind of opportunity we have, what kind of land needs, what kind of businesses, and why. But we don't have a draft in hand yet for you folks to review and chime in on quite yet.
Yeah, is this the type of the information that you have going? The stuff that I see on the screen?
Yeah, exactly. This is information that we do have from Oregon employment data that we've gotten, the consultant working on this. And then the other chart that Jacqueline asked a really good question about what's a good job housing balance.
Yeah, I heard that.
And yeah, so that was kind of a good conversation. Here's one of the other figures, just so you see it. Just as of 2019, employed residents in North Plains are overwhelmingly working somewhere else.
Not
company.
surprising.
No, this isn't shocking at all, of course. But next week we meet with Washington County Board of the county commissioners, and we're going to give a presentation about how North Plains has been growing and how it's thinking about its future growth. And what we're going to communicate to them with all this information is the North Plains economy hasn't been growing rapidly. We've been adding jobs, but what we've really been doing with all this housing growth is providing workforce housing to the Washington County economy at large, to employers everywhere. So we'd like the county to partner with us to help rebalance that some with some employment growth in the city. That's, because we're already contributing workforce housing to the regional economy. We think it's appropriate to kind of have more of a role in the county economy as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about.
I mean, and we kind of run into the same old issue that we've kind of kicked around on this committee, which is, I mean, even if we bring more commerce, we don't necessarily have the land available right now, right? I believe when we talked about this 2018-ish, it was like 600 or 300 acres roughly, I think, that we needed for commercial and residential growth in the future for UGB.
Commercial and residential combined in the 2018 study, that's about right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so we still have that need, obviously, right?
Yes. Yeah. So and so basically at the end of this month, we'll have a better idea of what the range of land need and opportunity is for the city.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, where I'm going with this is that the county can, can potentially help, but don't we have to ultimately play in our own sandbox to come up with the land that, any potential funding, grants, future monies would go to?
We do, but as far as the urban growth boundary process goes, it's really the county that we have to work with on what amounts to an agreement that's sort of like a development agreement, like getting the UGB amendment process authorized. We have to work with the county because we're a UGB within the county,
Mhm.
and then work with DLCD, Department of Land Conservation and Development. So
Okay.
the county has a regulatory partnership involved here.
Mhm.
But we are working with the county's ECDev staff as well as ECDev staff
Makes
with other
sense.
cities. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that makes sense. And I guess for the larger understanding for the committee, that they understand that that has to go on in the background at the same time as we start new conversations, because ultimately, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, is the conversation of exception land, or currently dubbed exception land, right? Can these folks help us move the ball along on that as we start to look toward prioritizing where UGB goes?
Well, we can go through the process. When it comes to exception land, you're referring to the land that's south of the freeway, basically all of this.
Mhm.
Okay. In Oregon's land use planning list of prioritizing land to look at to expand your UGB, if there are what are called exception lands adjacent to your existing UGB, you have to look at them first as highest priority. And exception lands are simply lands that are rural in character, but have urbanized in some way. So everything north of the freeway around the city, basically, the city UGB is pretty much just farmland and farms. Land south of the freeway are exception lands because we have the Cameron Jewett industrial facility there. We have the airstrip planned community, the homes around the airstrip there, and there is a farm or two in between. So it's rural, but it's semi-urbanized, and we have to look there first, but before we have to look there and figure out what, if not all of it, is appropriate to bring into the UGB. And then given how much of that is appropriate, how much more elsewhere that isn't exception lands do we need to look? And so it's kind of a 1-2 stage process, but we go through that. We go through the rules on that on our own. We don't have to have the county.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we don't have to have the county really do anything for us on that. It's up to us to do the homework on it.
Got it.
Anyway, that's the UGB update. Oh, we spent a little while on it when really all I meant to say was I don't have some really good draft results to give to you all yet. So and Lisa kindly kind of began with the agenda.
Cool.
So you can get things rolling however you like now, Gabe.
Are you working with a new consultant group, or the same ones that did the old EOA?
I'm the one that did I revised the old EOA, but no, this is a different company that's doing it.
Cool.
This company tends to do EOAs for cities that desire to kind of change their economic development path. Take a harder look at what type of growth and development is realistic, and then kind of get more specific about what needs to be done and what those opportunities are. They're not a strictly land planning firm per se, so they're a little bit different in this case.
Cool. And then is the idea to still move to a small committee once something is formalized, or you have drafts or revisions that are going to be looked at?
Yeah, the plan, I had a project meeting with the consultant and our land use, consulting land use attorney today, and we should have a set of results by the end of the month, which means I should be able to get something to you to start talking at the next meeting, first week of February.
Okay. Just to the general committee that's on, I had a note for, was there some kind of a downtown plan survey that was administered? Did I forget something?
Downtown plan survey,
Yeah,
there was a survey.
yeah, did we, I don't know where the results ever tallied, or did we ever discuss those?
The results were tallied. I just don't think that I don't think they've officially been presented to
Got
the
it.
downtown committee yet.
Okay,
Lisa, have we done that yet? It's been a little while on that particular committee, and I've had UGB and replacing finance employees
Yeah.
coming out my ears lately.
yeah, no worries.
Yeah, no, we haven't done that yet, and we haven't met since, I guess, before the survey started.
Yeah. Yeah, the next meeting of the downtown committee, we'll talk about the results of the survey. I mean, I can tell you right now, just very generally, survey results pointed to city residents really wanting to see some commercial services in downtown, dining, shopping, and not quite as crazy about the idea of housing. Not against it, but really wanting things to go spend money at downtown. That was events, dining, shopping, those kinds of things. That was much more of a priority. But we'll get into the specifics of that at the next meeting, at the next downtown meeting.
Cool. All right, the other agenda item that I had on there, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me in terms of the actual agenda was, oops, did I lose you guys? Hello?
We're here.
Nope, you're here. You're
Yep.
good.
Hold on a sec. I don't know where my screen went. Hey, there you are. Bill, I don't know if you have the a copy of the thing that you can project on the screen, the roadmap, or if we sent it out with the survey or the agenda.
Look at that.
Beautiful. All right, so this could obviously still use some spoofing up, but just to kind of jump into it, I did not update any of the rows or the columns. I just kept those the same for lack of not wanting to change the overall formatting. And I know that Bill had mentioned before that we could probably, if we wanted to, send this over to somebody that has a better skill set, being by the name of Corinne, perhaps also put her 2 cents,
Yes.
into the roadmap. So that being said, I just wanted to kind of take a look with you all, obviously, and have you review it, look over it. We don't necessarily need to go line for a line, item for item. I did capture quite a few notes over the course of probably 2 meetings and a work session in order to kind of just put a little bit of change and spin on some of this. So if there's something where we need revision wise, I wanted to use this time in the work session to use the team's input. My original idea was to actually put it out to y'all, have you look at it and digest it, but figure we have time to do it in the work session right now. So if it's your first look at it, I'll give us a couple of minutes here just to run through it. And then, I don't know, let's say about 4 or 5 minutes, we can just open up a discussion and see if there's any revisions or topics that we want to talk about. And Bill, I don't know if you had any time to look at it, but thank you for helping start this with the concepts that were put out there, and for working through the conversations with us as well. Your input is welcome.
Sure. Thank you. Sure. Let's do this. So Gabe, you have a question from Jacqueline.
I see it. Okay, did we discuss the additional, thank you. Did we discuss the additional of? No, I did not. So maybe that's where we can start. It's probably a good conversation starter. So I guess thought provoking, Jacqueline, what would you say?
I meant addition of measures. Sorry about my typo. I remember looking at this last time, and I don't know if my head's just in strategic planning mode, but thinking about what's the KPI that the actions and partnerships are meant to contribute. So if we're trying to develop by how much, and is there a way to orient this towards a KPI or a target that is measurable?
Gotcha. Yeah, I would think that anything that is kind of project oriented could probably be tied to realistic timelines. I think the second piece of this would be naturally to have a Gantt chart that would kind of, yeah, exactly, would be updated as well. I did not do any updating of the Gantt, but to those points, yes, I think we can definitely put dates on there and update the Gantt chart in correlation with what you're speaking to.
And so in thinking about that, what is the X to Y? And then the Gantt chart would show by when. So
Yeah,
we want to grow by X amount of households or X amount of revenue or X amount of,
New businesses.
new businesses. Yeah. How would we know that we're successful, or what is the measurable KPI that the actions are in service to? And I don't know if that would force us to reorient how this is laid out, because this might be more project-based. And if you go to a KPI level, really good projects hit more than one KPI. And so I don't mean to reframe this, but it would be helpful to understand the relationship to measurable KPIs.
yeah, and I don't know that we've had those discussions from a simple standpoint of we were trying to get a more of a macro view that was, I guess, more itemized than what we had previously, because what we had previously was large buckets with, kind of some general concept and ideas. So I think this is just kind of next revision to that. But to your point, I think, then we would go pretty small in detail and orient each, let's just say each row, right? So number one, we would probably need to dissect it as a group and talk about what does that look like? What projects are we going to have our hands in on? What is the end goal or end result that you're speaking of? So I think we could definitely expand on that for the purpose of probably this conversation. Maybe we can take some side notes, not to table too much, but that's going to probably work into a much larger conversation and some, I don't know, an additional document, or like you said, orientation, or do we footnote and annotate the Gantt chart, with those things? I'm open to any and all of it. I guess right now, what I want to make sure is that we captured in the right rows and buckets, exactly what we were trying to do, looking at even just the years, like, we're on a brand new year, 2022, what's realistic for us to grab out of these ideas and really start running with. I think we're still trying to figure out what stewardship looks like in this day and age. As we just got the email, everything else is moving back to online and virtual formats. So I think that the working document that we currently possess is still a working document because of those things. I think it kind of got put aside and slowed down quite a bit because the partnerships that we were going to lean on, even just having speakers at these sorts of meetings and kind of growing the relationships and strategies from that standpoint, has kind of slowed down just because of the pandemic. So we've got to, I think, just utilize this roadmap and see where we can pick up right now and run with for 2022. Otherwise,
I think
it's going to be, go ahead.
That was my only question to the group would be, are we essentially assuming it would be a standard year, so to say, or are we trying to take into account a number of variables? There's quite a few action items that obviously would be affected if we aren't able to put on, small business training workshops and things like that, where the nature of it is going to be stifled by a pandemic. And I'm assuming the Gantt chart is something we would put together, and with the thought we would be changing it kind of quarter by quarter or in the middle of the year or something along those lines. But is that something where we would have maybe okay, best case scenario, we can put on 3 small business training workshops this year as an example, and just kind of have a best case, worst case, or try to aim low for the low hanging fruit? Or what's everyone's thoughts on, I guess, how to frame our KPIs and how aggressive we want to be?
Good comments, good questions. I don't know that I have a straightaway answer. Does anybody have any input?
It wasn't necessarily anything we need to solve or even discuss right now, just something I was thinking about in terms of, I'm sure
Well,
obviously all
why
of
don't-
us are thinking about it
Why don't you
every
put
day.
together an individual development plan and we'll circle back with that one.
I'll
Chop,
get
chop,
you a worst
chop,
case,
chop.
worst case, best case, end of day.
So I guess to kind of keep or get the conversation moving, I've got notes here already written down with regards to kind of honing in, focusing, putting more realistic, it's for a corporate term, right? A SMART goal, make it measurable, achievable, realistic, time sensitive. So, I got the notes for going forward, but with regards to the document, is there anything that needs to be kind of revised or looked at from our standpoint, word wise, or do we need to slide something over under a different row or column?
I couldn't remember if we already discussed this, but the extend the URA sunset date is under the first column. Should we have it in maybe both that first column and the URA partnership column, number 3 as well, maybe just to really solidify how important it is?
I guess what I would add on to Eric's comment, and I think it's a good one, is from an agency standpoint, in terms of what the URA is and what it legally can do and what it's legally supposed to do, you right now could eliminate the URA specific column of strategy and information, because the URA has to focus on downtown revitalization and Glencoe Road development. I mean, that's its charge. That's literally the mission. So I don't know that you need to have I guess what I mean to say is I don't know that you need to have that third column, because the URA doesn't do anything with future growth and land use availability. It kind of helps with business growth and strategy, but that really kind of also falls under number 1. I would put it out there that you could simplify things by elaborating on 1, and you don't really need 3 per se, is what I would say from the standpoint of how the URA works, or has to work.
So some of these should transfer over to the other column, and then maybe your advice is to delete the URA altogether. I think the piece that we have, I think the main reason why we put it on there as a committee was for the accountability piece, so we can have a roadmap for ourselves, right? To understand exactly how the function of the URA plays into this thing, but I don't see why, we can't combine the two.
I mean, it's up to you. I would just say, overwhelmingly the focus of the URA itself is everything in 1, and you can add to 1. I guess I don't know how useful it is to have 2 different columns that really in my view, really kind of get the same thing, actually.
Yeah, so it's feasible to say that the urban growth boundary will deal with obviously the downtown development, land use, and transportation action plan, any of that stuff. Will basically the actions of column 3 fall into the urban growth boundary?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, the caveat, okay, so when the time comes to consider changing the urban renewal district, extending the sunset date, we're also going to take a look at, do we want the urban renewal district to remain this specific area and this grouping of properties? Or do we want to change that? Do we want to make it bigger? Do we want to take some things out but add some areas in that haven't developed as much? Some cities, when they do an urban growth boundary expansion, and this kind of gets at the caveat, is they'll cherry stem the urban renewal agency up the major road that is connecting to the urban growth boundary expansion area. They'll cherry stem the URA up the road and then have the URA be part of financing infrastructure for future growth, particularly for future employment and industrial growth. That's how all that North Hillsborough industrial development that's currently under construction that you see, that started out as a big brand new urban renewal agency. So you can use urban renewal to fund infrastructure for future growth, but the way the district is right now, it really is Commercial Street and Glencoe.
Any of the members of the EDC have anything? Any input?
I mean, we could actually have a second urban renewal agency if we figured out that was the better way of doing things.
So do you folks want to, for permanent sake on the number 3, do we want to, I don't know, if you're not comfortable with totally getting rid of it, we could hide the column for now, but the suggestion being that maybe it's just 3 big buckets. I'm okay with the document either way we go, guys. So, whatever we're comfortable with, we can make this thing work.
I think there is quite a bit of overlap. The only thing, my reviewing it is, it's more of a URA instead of partnership, maybe URA extension, like how we can take what the URA is doing or what that focus is and extend it into like business growth and strategy, future of economic growth, the things that's not what the URA is focused on and what the point of the URA is. So I guess some of those points we can maybe just group with, essentially take it as a downtown and Glencoe Road, but then I guess extrapolate it from there, use it as a jumping off point for the future of economic growth, the business growth and strategy. And then that was points 2 and 4 in the 3rd column. And then the 1st and the 3rd would pretty much just be part of the URA, which is captured in the 1st column.
Yeah, I like those 2 comments specifically. The business growth and strategy can go under the downtown revitalization and Glencoe Road project development. And I think it's pretty general in terms of the term is right now that would be sliding over there, but we could definitely rip to Jackie's point earlier. Once we figure out what the business growth and strategy is, with the help of obviously EOA and some of the other conversations have yet to happen, then we hone in on exactly what those things are. And then the other piece, I think, just is self-explanatory: future of the economic growth, land use, and availability. It's what we got right now. in terms of the revitalization and Glencoe Road development. That's what's available. It's what we can work with for that development. And so let me jot those notes real quick. Eric, I like those two comments. Was there any others specifically that we should look at moving or sliding over?
I think do we want to worry at all about agency partners in terms of, I think we capture the Chamber of Commerce, the URA, and so maybe we shift over the partners of DLCD and ODOT and the planning and development over to that first column as well, and just to really capture all of the
Yeah.
partners we would be utilizing.
Okay,
Other
so-
than that, I think
So move 2 and 3. Oh,
yes,
2 and 3A.
2 and
2
4,
and-
yeah.
All right. Same with the last two.
Yep.
All right, cool. There it is. Major change accepted. Jackie, Lisa, if you guys are, or you ladies are on, is it, we okay with those moves?
Yeah.
Yep, me too.
Okay. And I didn't see who else was on as our other panel line.
Nope, just us.
Okay. All right, so I got those. Any additions? We feel like there's any gaping holes with what we've been talking about, what we've been working on with this?
I don't think so. I think it captures everything that we kind of went back and forth over the past couple weeks or meetings, I guess. Thanks for putting it together and all your work revising it all.
Yeah, you guys,
Mhm.
this one was definitely a team effort, so we got one more spin on it, obviously, and then we could talk about, you know, who you want to distribute to and what we do next with this. Bill, maybe I asked that question to you in terms of, you know, I guess broader communication, so this doesn't just live within our EDC confines. You know, what would communication look like? Or, you know, if we wanted to kind of share what we're doing work-wise here, do we need to do a work session or just join into a work session, or take a little slot in a future city council meeting? Or, you know, like, what does that look like in terms of communicating what we would consider a finalized roadmap?
I think so. A couple of different things. So number one would be, yeah, some kind of meeting with city council again, just to kind of show this is our refined recommended work plan, and these are kind of our, you know, our three or four big areas of emphases. And to talk about that, there will be the EOA will be done. So that will be, the EOA will be done. The downtown plan will be a bit further along. So all the different things that you all are talking about will be very much active with city council. So you can kind of talk about prioritizing these things. The other thing you can do, honestly, is budget season is coming up. And very specifically for some of these things, it would be great to have somebody show up at the budget committee meeting, at least one, and talk about ECDEV priorities and how, for budgeting purposes, particularly for the URA, how maybe some of these things should get bumped up in terms of priority for funding. That would be important too, at the very least.
What does the timeline look like for their budgeting?
So we'll have one. I don't know if we'll have two budget committee meetings in April. Okay. yeah, it's typically April is budget committee meeting month. And we were on a biennial budget. And so the 2-year budget that includes this coming, the 2022-2023 fiscal year, the budget is technically already approved because it was done last year, a 2-year budget. But we have to meet again and revisit things and make sure we're on course and recommend any changes. That's when you would come in and say, you know what? This downtown plan is making it clear we really need a downtown association, or, you know, that sort of thing. You can kind of come in and strike while the iron's hot on some priorities.
Yeah. Okay.
And as far as like some of the agency partners and funding sources, I'll work with you very specifically on that. There's a few that are missing, and I don't, you know, that could easily be added. I don't, you know, the further down you go, the more detail, less goal and more detail this gets. And we don't need to get lost in the weeds here, but I can help you with some other things, just to kind of add funding sources.
Okay.
That's easy. That's an easy enough detail to add offline.
Perfect. Okay. I like it. I took some more notes just with regards to what I'm writing down and saying. So I got the revisions to the roadmap, which we can apply, final revised. And then, you know, Bill, I don't know with regards to making it, you know, I don't know if you want to share it with, we discussed before, share with Corinne or Andy or anybody for any further input, you know, prior to us saying, okay, this is our final. But that's obviously open as well. It's something that we're comfortable with, I think, as a committee, obviously.
Yeah, I think.
And then, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just saying, you know, maybe kind of pass this around and make your kind of revised draft notes, or kind of get it to a revised draft, what you would call revised draft form.
Yeah.
And then I will take it, Andy and I will review it. And if just for clarity or whatever, you know, we want to recommend any edits, we can do that and give it back to you.
Okay.
And then Corinne's ready to just take it and pretty it up. Basically, she's the communication expert with the graphic design background, so she's ready to kind of run and make this look way better.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Cool. So that's kind of the next steps. So those are the notes that I'm running away from this work session with, basically around this specific topic.
Okay.
Team EDC, y'all have anything else that you want to put in, or any other topics that we need to address with regards to this roadmap?
I thought this session of work was very productive, and I appreciate everyone's input.
Yes, and Gabe, thanks for doing pre-work to get us to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I apologize for having to postpone for 1 month to get it done, but hey, it's here, and I think we're at a good spot right now. And again, utilizing this month just as a work session was more or less Bill's idea, just with regards to getting us back on track with these regular meetings. So I think it's a good use. Do we have anything else that we want to discuss during this time? Is there anything that we need to kind of going into this new year, being right at the start of January, that we want to address or think about moving to the next agenda meeting?
Bill, in terms of the Glencoe opportunity development, is that moving along according to plan, so to say, in terms of it's still something we can plan on getting our hooks into with this roadmap and whatnot? Or is it something we should need to delay the timeline on or anything like that? I just wanted to get your feel for the overall timeline of it.
Great question. So the update on that is that we have a negotiation agreement with Rembold, and the clock is ticking on really kind of hammering out a far more specific development plan for the property. apparently one of the senior members of the team on the project financing side lost a relative or something, so that's kind of delayed some of their work on it. But we did get an update recently. They are finalizing basically letters of interest agreement from the different tenants. In the meantime, they're actually working on reducing the estimates of costs, which I'm pleased. I thought that their preliminary cost estimates came in way too high as far as I was concerned. And so I'm pleased to see that they acknowledge that. So that makes me feel better about some of the work I'm going to have to do about financial feasibility and what the URA will partner with them on. But we haven't had kind of that first meeting to really kind of get down to brass tacks on the physical development plan. And we hope to be doing that later this month. We just haven't gotten a commitment for that first meeting to happen yet. So the schedule slipped a little bit, but mostly on target.
Do you think they're gonna present a new, a revised kind of site layout with any of that?
Yeah, so one of the issues that there are a couple of different things going on. Number one is the hardware store with the garden center next to it. They're working on getting that committed, and so that will kind of become more official. The other side of it, though, is that the development schematic you've seen assumes parking requirements under current code for the general commercial zone in North Plains. And what we've asked them to do is come back to us with a plan that if they didn't have to hew exactly to the current plant parking code, if we were to pursue some changes to give them more flexibility on their project, what else could they get in there instead of a bunch of parking in the middle? I mean, they know what their businesses need for parking better than what our zoning code understands business parking needs not as well as they know the parking needs of the businesses that are going to be in the center. So we're asking them to come back and take a look at what they could do differently if they could be a little more flexible on having not quite as much on-site parking. So that we might see a little bit more development on the site as a result. So that's part of the plan process.
Yeah. So what about more specifically, do you know if they've begun conversations with the county? I mean, it may be too soon for ingress, egress access, things of those natures.
We've confirmed with the county exactly where and what. It would just boil down to figuring out what the cost is. But we have 3 points of access on the property, so it's no big deal.
Okay.
Yep. Shouldn't be any battles. It'll just be money.
Which is always a battle.
which can be a battle. That is correct. Yeah.
Cool. Well, that is all I have officially. So I know that this is on record, just in terms of the recording round robin. It sounded like everybody's good, but one last chance. Anybody else? Anything? Yes, Bill.
Erica has made it official. She will not be extending her term on the EDC. So we've made it official in announcing that we're looking for a new member to volunteer. Okay. So please officially spread the word to folks you think would be great to have on the team here.
Okay, fair enough. All right, y'all. I think we can officially adjourn this guy, and everybody get back to their families, homes, whatever y'all are up to this evening. Thank you for attending. Thank you for starting it out, Lisa. I appreciate y'all for being here.
You bet.
Thanks,
right,
everyone.
Happy New Year.
Absolutely. Happy New Year.